In Facebook, coming in YouTube, got a brand new episode of Jimmy Rants coming up here momentarily over on Instagram. How you guys doing today? I am busy. I go to see my tax guy later today, so a lot of you guys probably already filed your income tax return, but I had an appointment set up with my tax guy, what was it, April 2nd? And it was set up like early in the year. And so we were supposed to meet on April 2nd. Of course, all the COVID-19 stuff came out and shut everything down. So I was not able to go see him. So today is when I go see my tax guy, which is kind of weird. It's the middle of June and I'm just now going to see the tax guy. But yeah, it's going to be interesting turning it in by July 15th instead of April 15th. And I probably owe money on the taxes, and then I owe the first quarter taxes, which I've not paid because I don't know what to pay yet. And now the second quarter taxes are coming due. So I have some taxation coming my way. I'll find out today what that is. What's up, Shirley, over on YouTube? Thank you for watching. Hello, Christine and Norma and Tracy, Patrick, Nancy. Thank you all for being here today. We're getting ready to start my show, Jimmy Rants, over on Instagram. So I was sharing a little bit of having to go pay my taxes. So, yeah, it's just the necessary evil. I'm doing my taxes today, says Patrick. Yes. And when you're a small business owner and all the little intricacies of having non-traditional income, I remember the first time I went to see this tax guy many years ago. He's like, "So what do you do for a living?" I was like, I'm a podcaster." He's like, "What the heck is that?" This was like 12 years ago. He's like, "What the heck is that?" I said, "Oh, I talk on the radio, but it's on the internet." And he's like, "You do anything else?" Kind of like there was no like description for that. Nobody was doing what I was doing at the time. What's up, Denise? What's up, Trina? So I was like, well, I have written a couple of books. He said, "Good, you're an author." And so immediately he classified me as author because he could put it there. But when I first started podcasting and making this my job that I did for a living, nobody was really doing that yet. And so he was like, "What are you? What do you do? What do you do for a living?" And so anyway, now I guess more people do this for a living and they figured out codes for that. But back then it was like, okay, you're an author. And the ironic thing is I was an author, just a self-published author at the time. Now I'm actually with a major publisher and have done 7 books with them. So now author is probably pretty legit. And it probably does make up the majority of my income that I do make, the royalties from that. So anyway, taxes, got to go do that today. Hello, Pam. Thank you for being here. So we're getting ready to start my show, Jimmy Rants. So as always, be sure you share it on your pages if you think this is something of value that would be interesting to your followers on your page. You can also post it to any group page that you're a member of. So if you think this is good information to share with them, please feel free to share the link. And yeah, we're gonna get this show on the road. You guys ready? Alrighty, so let's get going over on Instagram. And here we go. Is being skeptical a healthy attitude to have? You bet it is, and we're going to tell you why here today on Jimmy Rants. Click on that little box down in the corner. You'll go straight to IGTV and you can watch this on replay. JimmyRants.com is the website, and as always, you can engage live in the content, but you got to go follow me. I'm over on Instagram. I am at Living Low Carb Man, LivinLowCarbMan. Want you there, engage live, just like Berkeley and Gustavo and Ashton and so many people coming in right now to watch this live on Instagram. We also simulcast live over here on my Facebook page, so welcome into all you guys for being here today on Jimmy Rants as well. And then finally, all my YouTubers live streaming it over there as well. So welcome, Jimmy Rants family. It's always a pleasure to have you here. If you missed the live here on Instagram, be sure you check it out on replay on IGTV. We do try to get it up pretty quick after we end the show, so go check out IGTV for any of the past episodes that you might have missed. We also throw all the past episodes up over on YouTube. Type in a keyword, Jimmy Rants, and a search there. You will find the show. And then finally, we do have an official website for this show called jimmyrants.com. Do you imagine that? And so while you're there, you can see all the past episodes. Over 500 videos are up there right now if you want to go check out all the things that we've done. And if you like what we do here and you like the show, I don't do any advertisers on here. I've had ones trying to pitch me, by the way, wanting me to hold up their product and do like a little ad. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't fit this show because that's not my heart. So I share from my heart, and I share bluntly and sometimes controversially. So I don't want any products or anything to kind of distort that message. But I would appreciate it if you would support me. I do have a Patreon link right there at jimmyrants.com. If you like what we do here, you want to see me keep this going, just click on that little Patreon link, and whatever you can give would be very much appreciated. Okay, guys, I want to talk about a topic here today that seems to be appropriate in the world we're living in right now, because there seems to be, regardless of whatever topic you're thinking about, there seems to be this idea of being skeptical about what we're hearing. Of course, it's been out there for many years. Those of you that have followed me in the low carb kind of keto space, the reason we got involved was we found out some of the messages that we've been told about diet and health and cholesterol and what it means to your health, and a lot of just health messaging in general have been dead wrong. And so when you find out you've been lied to, when you find out that some things you've always believed were absolutely true are suddenly not true, what does that make you do? It makes you become skeptical. It makes you within yourself have a healthy dose of skepticism. And sometimes people say skepticism is denial, and you're denying the truths that are out there. Like, I've had many dietitians write to me because I'll say, you know, they always want to say saturated fat clogs your arteries, but there's really no evidence to support that. And I have some well-meaning dietitians that write to me, well, we know it's proven undeniably that saturated fat clogs your arteries and gives you heart disease. I'm like, can you please show me the truth? My skepticism comes in. Can you please show me the evidence that supports that? Sometimes they will send me a link to some epidemiological study or some mouse study or rabbit study. See, they fed these rabbits saturated fat and the rabbits got heart disease. So then I write back and go, you know, rabbits are herbivores, right? And so if you force feed saturated fat into an herbivore, they're going to get heart disease. You know that, right? No, I didn't know that, but we still should cut back on our saturated fat. I'm like, I'm not a rabbit. What's up, doc? I'm not a rabbit, but I'm a human being. Do you have any human studies that shows the consumption of saturated fat leads to heart disease? They don't have it. If they do cite a study, it's Ansel Keys, and we've talked about Ansel Keys many times before on Jimmy Rants and how he fudged the data. There is no data. And so when you present an alternative viewpoint or simply just ask questions, which is what a good skeptic does, a good skeptic doesn't make proclamations. A good, healthy dose of skepticism is just inquiring, just putting out questions. Okay, this is what's being said, but what about this? And what about this? And maybe you have some supporting evidence for your skepticism. Well, what about this? And you start having a conversation. And of course, this applies across the board to every part of our life. I mean, think about COVID-19. When COVID-19 hit, did everybody buy into it was this global pandemic that we all needed to avoid like the Black Plague? because that was the official narrative that was put out there. Did everybody buy into the idea that we needed to stay on lockdown and was happy about it and faithfully stayed in their houses? No. There were people who were skeptical, who said, okay, this doesn't seem right. Something's wrong here. Things aren't adding up. And of course, as that story has continued to unfold, you all need to wear a mask. No, nobody needs to wear a mask. Oh, we all need to stay locked up in our homes. Oh no, when you're in your home, that you're more susceptible to getting COVID-19. And it just seems like the back and forth has spawned even more skepticism from people. And now we're being told, well, there's going to be a second wave later this year that's going to force us all back into lockdown. Do you know how many people will revolt if they try to lock us down again? And this is where the skepticism comes in. And again, people think that is denial. But what it actually is in the midst of uncertainty, in the midst of not knowing what in the world is happening, skepticism is merely a search for the truth. And when you're looking for truth, you can't find the truth of things until you start asking questions, until you go and buck the official narrative that's being put out there. There's skepticism being applied to the race relations thing right now. There's people that are like, well, why is this suddenly coming up in a presidential election year? And so you've got a certain number of people that are skeptical that this is real right now and that we're really having these fights over race and social injustice. And, well, don't fall for it. It's a trick by the Democrats. They're trying to get Trump not get reelected, and that's all this is about. And so their skepticism leads them to believe that way. And so sometimes skepticism can be healthy, and sometimes skepticism can be unhealthy. So I have an article here, and if you just joined us, we're talking about this concept of being skeptical. And a lot of times people think skepticism is denying fact and denying truth. But no, sometimes skepticism is a search for that very truth that we don't think we have in the midst of an uncertain time. So I have an article, you guys, from liberationist.org, and it's called Why Being Skeptical Will Make You See Life Sharply. If you're one of those skeptical people, raise your hand loud and proud. I'm one of those people. I tend to be skeptical about most things because once your eyes have been opened about how you've been lied to in one area of your life, and for a lot of us it was diet and health, it kind of makes you naturally skeptical about every aspect of your life. So they get into that here and they explain why skepticism is a very good thing that shows you've got your thinking cap on and that you truly want to learn and come to understanding and wisdom about the things in the world. All right. Certainty can cripple your wisdom. So it was Voltaire that said, those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. Oh my gosh. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. Oh, I'm like thinking of so many examples just flashing through my head of where that quote applies. So a young man caught a small bird and held it behind his back. He then asked, Master, is the bird I hold in my hands alive or dead? He thought it was a grand opportunity to play a trick on this old man. If the master answered dead, the young man was planning to set the bird free. If the master answered alive, he would simply wring its neck. The master spoke. He said, the answer is in your hands. So the boy thought he had the old man tricked, and the man tricked him back and said, it's not up to me. You're the one. You know the answer. It's in your hands. Certainty is a trap. It can make us feel in control even if we have to deceive others. Think about those things in your life that you are 100% certain about. Okay? You know what those are in your heart of hearts, and you're thinking of very specific things that you're certain of. Have you ever stopped to wonder why you're so certain of those things? Have you ever wondered why you're so certain in those things and how that makes you feel? Do you feel the fact that you believe things with 100% absolute certainty? Do you feel like that gives you some sense of security in having that knowledge? I think a lot of people do. And have you seen evidence that runs contrary to that certainty, but you dig in your heels because the certainty obviously can't be wrong? We're going to go a little deep philosophically here today, so I hope you're ready for this. So the young man with the bird didn't care about the master's answer. He just wanted to stay in control. The young man was willing to kill a bird just to be right. So we all want our life to go according to our plan. We wish to know what will happen next. However, life is out of all of our control. Your craving for certainty can derail you from experiencing life as it is. I think about all those people who are living in fear and living in stress and in a chronic stress state right now because of the uncertainty about COVID-19. Like, think about all the areas of our life that COVID-19 came along and it just royally effed it all up, right? As a sports fan, I have been missing sports with a passion. And I've been watching all of the different sporting leagues talking about how they're going to come back and how they're going to limit fans and how they're going to da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And so that's just a small microcosm of one area of our lives that has been affected by this. But even for you personally, maybe you lost your job. Maybe you had to kind of shift gears and work from home and you've never done that before. So many areas of our life have grown uncertain. And we want that certainty. But what they're making the claim here is that craving for wanting certainty in your life is actually preventing you from experiencing it. Now, I've seen some beautiful things, especially here on Instagram, of people who have adapted to the changes that have taken place. And rather than being paralyzed by the uncertainty, they have embraced it and said, look at how we're making memories together. I don't think any of us is quite going to forget 2020 for the rest of our lives. This is kind of an unprecedented event. I would dare say, from a remembering standpoint, this is an unprecedented event, even bigger than 9/11 in 2001. And so, yeah, it's interesting how people are either letting this uncertainty paralyze them or they're just rolling with it. So the certainty mindset, wanting to have the truth, as if truth is only one thing, and sometimes it is, but other times it may not be. Truth can be blurry, can stop you from growing as a person. Rather than discovering life, you get stuck into what is familiar. Man, I can't tell you how many times I have defaulted back to old thinking simply because it was familiar and comfortable in my mode of thinking. And we all do that, whether we realize it or not. You default back to what is natural and feels normal. Even if that normal has been shown to be something that's maybe not ideal, maybe not even correct. And I'll tell you, in the diet world, it looks like this. You get gung-ho about keto. You go on a well-formulated, low-carb, moderate protein, high-fat ketogenic diet. You start eating and you're gung-ho about this and you're doing it and you're having a great time and you're losing weight and getting healthy, and then suddenly, well, I know cutting fat is healthy because I've known it my whole life. So maybe I'm eating too much fat. I guess I'm going to cut down on the fat while I restrict my carbs. And suddenly you've changed back to some old ways of thinking. Has anybody done that? Oh yeah, you know you have. You have. Because I'll have people write me and they'll be like, well, I know all this fat can't be this healthy, so I've cut back on it. Is that still keto? Maybe, but like, why are you doing that? well, I know it's going to clog my artery. No, get out of that certainty in your mind about this thing you've already convinced yourself is not true. But we like that hard truth that's just been hardwired into us, even if it was never a truth at all. The world is fluid and unexpected. Life is always a surprise. You don't need certainty in your life, but rather to be open to challenging every single thing you believe is true. That's the path for personal discovery in order to see life more sharply. Do you naturally question things? And I did a recent Jimmy Rants about how beliefs are formed. And a lot of people think they hear something, they vet it out, they determine whether it's true or false, or whether they believe it or don't believe it, and then they have their opinion based on that thinking it through. And what psychologists have found is, no, that's not how it goes at all. How it goes is you hear something and your default is believe it. This is why a lot of people get suckered into a headline. Well, I read somewhere that eating meat causes cancer and will kill you faster than eating plants. So what did they do? They read a headline that said, a study said that. Oh, so what medical journal is the study in? I don't know. So what did the study actually look at? I don't know. Were there human participants in this, or did they just observe data or animals or something? I don't know. And so people hear things and it immediately becomes a belief long before they even think about vetting it out. Now, some people do the work later to vet out whether it's true or not, but most people in the moment, you're flipping through your phone and you see a headline come across the screen. You may not even read the actual article. You may not go to the journal or anything. And you just believe what the headline said. And we don't want to believe we're that gullible, but we're that gullible. We're that willing to trust things. And again, once you start being skeptical in one area of your life, a lot of us, diet and health, it makes you skeptical in pretty much every area of your life. To the point now that when I hear something, my first reaction is not to just have a knee-jerk reaction. My first reaction is not even to respond at all. My first reaction to anything I hear is think. Does that pass the smell test? Does that even make sense within the context of all my life experiences and all my intellect and all of the things I already believe and know and have vetted out? Does this fit? Okay, let's say it does. Even then, you're still going to look into it further. You're still going to try to determine, is this something that has validity that I need to give more credence to, and thus need to have a healthy skepticism about until I come to some conclusion of its veracity or not, right? Certainty can cripple your life. There is no certainty, there is only adventure, said Roberto Assagioli. Assagioli? I don't know who that is, but he's quoted in this article. Being certain does not mean you have the right answer. There are a lot of people in the vegan space that are absolutely certain that a plant-based diet is the ideal way for everybody to be eating. They are convinced, they would bet their mortgage, that every single person who goes on a vegan, vegetarian, plant-based diet is going to be incredibly thin and incredibly healthy for the rest of their lives. They are 100% certain of that. You've met them. Trust me. If you've met a vegan, you know it because they're telling you. There's a few carnivore people like that and much less keto people like that, but so certain about things. And yet, certain doesn't mean right. And we need to remember that. The mind is incredibly averse to anything that is uncertain and ambiguous. When we don't know something, we create our own reasonable explanation. You know those people in your life that no matter what you ask them about, whether they actually have experience or knowledge about it, they have an opinion. I know people like that. And I try hard because I do have a lot of interests that are well-rounded in a lot of different areas. But if I don't know something about something, I will just be the first to admit, yeah, I have no idea. I don't have any opinion on that because I haven't really thought it through. But there's people that will try to come up with some reasonable explanation for literally everything that you would ask them about. Now, I'm skeptical of those people. Like, all right, what are you trying to hide that you think you have to have an answer to everything and anything that's asked of you? They're there. According to cognitive science, we prefer to hold on to these invented justifications rather than admitting that we don't know. So, I've done communication long enough that I can tell when people are BSing me. And I can tell you when I get an email and I'm reading it and I see certain verbiage in a certain way, especially if it's some company trying to pitch me something, most of the time I'll get them to talk to me on the phone. And when I'm talking to them and I have this, I'm hearing what they're saying, if I feel like it's kind of this BS meter going off in my head, I'm like, yeah, thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to go ahead and take a pass. And I hang up the phone. And that's an intuition based on many years of skepticism, many years of questioning why things are, and questioning my own beliefs. I don't ever like dig in my heels that I know everything about everything. I think anybody that does that, you need to run far away from those people. But people who are skeptics, they're not denying anything other than, hey, all right, you claim that this thing that you're saying is true is absolutely true. All right, well, what about this? And what about this? I'll tell you a real life example of what's happened to me lately. I've been talking about more and more about the racial injustices and things that are going on. And I've been hashtagging things Black Lives Matter. And of course, when I've said that, I've made it very clear I'm not referring to the capital letter Black Lives Matter, the organization that's very political, and I think personally are using this message to try to do whatever they want to do. I'm talking about standing up for people that feel oppressed and people that have not been able to have a voice and get their message out there. That's what I mean when I write Black Lives Matter. And so people have been writing me, oh, I can't believe you're supporting this very far left wing, da 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 da, they're supporting the Democrat Party, blah blah. And I'm going, I'm not supporting that movement. I'm supporting the black community that needs white people to stand up for them. And so they're putting this message out there. They're skeptical of why I'm supporting Black Lives Matter. And then it just became this clarification of what I meant. And it's a search for the truth. It's a search for, okay, well, I'm not sure what you're standing up for. So when it's clearly stated, then people go, okay, all right. And some of them don't, but a lot of them go, okay, well, that makes sense. But their immediate knee-jerk reaction was to tie it to some truth that they had in their mind. And it made them skeptical about, okay, what do you mean there? See what I'm saying? All righty. Having an answer is not correlated to seeing life sharply. Ooh, listen to this, you guys. Social psychologist Ari Kruglansky coined this term called cognitive closure to describe our aversion towards ambiguity and uncertainty. We prefer having an answer as quickly as possible rather than discovering the truth. Can I tell you that's a man thing too, so bad? When we hear, especially in relationships, when we hear that there's an issue that's wrong with our girl, and we want to try to come up with an answer. We want to try to come in and save the day. Even if we haven't really thought it through, we're coming up with an answer as quickly as possible to resolve the issue. And of course, most of you know, and all you women are laughing because you know you don't always want an answer. You just want to be heard and understood of what you're saying, not necessarily fixing the problem. But that cognitive closure thing is a real thing. There are people that, okay, well, all right, here's how it goes. Da 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 da. Now, all that person says may or may not be true, but it has to be accepted as the truth in the moment because there's really no vetting out of what the truth actually is. So during times of fear and anxiety, the need for this cognitive closure goes up. Think about all the people that are looking for cognitive closure right now on COVID-19, cognitive closure right now on this race relations that's going on in the country. Think of all the ways people are seeking out cognitive closure. Studies have demonstrated that after a terrorist attack, for example, society feels an urge to find out who's responsible. I remember right after 9/11 hit, within a couple of hours, they had already identified Al-Qaeda as the group that did this, and they had already put the name Osama bin Laden on television. And it was almost like this need for having a villain, having someone to blame, needed to get out there sooner than later so that people could have some bit of a cognitive closure. Okay, now we know who's responsible. Now let's go get him. And eventually we did get him. It took a very long time, but eventually they did get him. But this fear can feed into rumors and fake versions, people sharing stories without any validation. And we've seen this in the midst of COVID-19, that the fear, oh, well, everybody that's getting coronavirus, COVID-19, is going to die, because that was what was being put out there. And all the models were talking about hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of people dying within the first month. And it was just, fear was out there in full force. And because there was no clarity being brought out, there was nobody, at least from the top, trying to say, okay, well, this is what we believe is happening, but we're still kind of questioning kind of what's going on. Nobody was doing that. Nobody was trying to reassure people that they don't really have absolute certainty about anything. So what happened? A lot of people on social media started to try to fill in the blanks for people. And a lot of those filling in the blanks, COVID-19 actually travels over 5G waves. And I was like, what? This was all just a big conspiracy by Bill Gates to get us all vaccinated and institute the one world order, one government, and all over. The mark of the beast is coming with everybody getting the vaccination. When you stay silent, you allow other people to feed into the fear with rumors and fake versions of what actually is going on. Now, whatever you believe about all those things I just said, I'm using those as examples of how that void can be filled when it's silent from people that are in the know. The desire to punish someone gets everyone out of control. It becomes okay to accuse the first apparent suspect. Yep. So being under attack rapidly affects our logic. Anyone is guilty until they're proven innocent. Not the other way around, as it should be. And if you live in the online world, even for a moment, just assume that if you put something out there, you're immediately guilty of whatever someone says you're guilty of. And if you're innocent, then, oh well. When I first started writing about some of the race relations stuff, I wasn't doing the language very well. And I immediately was guilty. I was called a racist and a white supremacist and I need to stay in my lane, all of these things. But nobody was telling me where I didn't get it right. They weren't explaining why the things I was sharing weren't exactly true. And it wasn't until I got that truth that then it made sense. But the skepticism that they were expressing was not coming with a healthy dose of understanding and trying to educate at the same time. I was just innocent of all these things, and they believed things about me based on simply what I had written. Never mind that it was coming from a place of love. It was coming from a sincere heart. They just immediately jumped on, you're all these things that we think you are, whether there was evidence for it or not. That's how the desire for certainty will cripple you. The need for closure makes you see the world in black or white. You simply close your mind to anything new. Guys, I'm not one of those people. I try to always question pretty much anything I believe. Now, there's some things, like I'm sitting on this couch right now. I believe if I sit on this couch, I'm not gonna fall. Now, I suppose it could happen that I sit down one day and, and it just collapses on me. But I'm pretty certain that when I sit down on this couch, I'm not gonna fall on the ground. But there's other areas of your life and other beliefs that you have that may need some healthy skepticism. Yep. So skepticism is not being in denial. Jidhu Krishnamurti says, do you want to know what my secret is? I don't mind whatever happens. If we could all live in a world where we don't mind what happens, we experience. I wish people would experience rather than expecting everyone else to kowtow to what they want to happen. Trying to find an answer is not wrong. Being blinded by the need for quick resolution is the problem. When we overreact, things get out of hand. That's the theme song of social media. Overreact 101. And they have mastered it. Just say something even remotely a little offbeat, off course, and watch the boo birds come out within seconds. The medicine becomes much more dangerous than the disease we're trying to cure. The opposite for this need for closure, which is what everybody likes in their head, they like to have closure happen. The opposite of that, you guys, is actually skepticism. Rather than taking the first answer you hear about something as real, you challenge it. You look for whether it's true or not. You don't let irrationality and fear dictate your answer. How many people do that? How many people let irrationality and fear overcome them? For whatever the reasons. Skepticism is not nihilism, nor is it being negative. What it's doing is it's adding an extra filter. You ever had filtered water compared with tap water? You add that extra filter, what does it do to the water? It improves the taste. It makes it more drinkable. It makes it more pure. Well, that's the same thing we're doing when we're skeptical about things. We're not trying to do anything except for having the best version of what that belief is in us come out. Rather than taking anything for granted, you want to validate the truth. You don't take social constructs as true, no matter how strong peer pressure is. And there's a lot of social constructs being put out there about a lot of different things. Do you automatically believe everything you hear in the way you hear it? Sometimes things are put out there and you have one group of people that looks at them in one way and that becomes their truth. And then you got another group of people looks at the exact same situation in a totally different way. And that becomes their truth. Does either one on either side of that issue start to add in a healthy dose of skepticism to figure out why those other people that see the exact same situation in a different light, why they believe the way they believe, and vice versa? Not often enough. There's probably a few people that do that, but it's not nearly often enough. Most people dig in their heels to what they believe, and they don't get off of it. The need for certainty can shape your perception. Your own stories will cloud your reality. You don't do this on purpose, of course. We all fall victim to the mind tricks. Challenging your own beliefs requires training your mind. So if you've never challenged anything about what you believe, you just believe it and it's like, okay, I believe it based on my world experiences, based on my life, based on all the things that's happened to me, therefore it's absolutely true. can I ask you to begin questioning those things? Because what I'm trying to do here on this Jimmy Rants here today is by having you become skeptical about anything that you believe, I'm helping you expand your horizons intellectually, psychologically, mentally. All of these things will make you a lot more critical thinking in the way you approach everything about what's happening around you. In the diet world, in the political realm, in your belief system about things, on and on and on it goes. Developing a critical mind will prevent you from taking the social constructs, rumor or not, for valid. That's how rumors get started in an office setting. One person creates a story, then they go to the water cooler. For some reason, the water cooler becomes the place where stories begin to spread. But they go to the water cooler, share it with 2 other people. Then they wait and see. When someone listens to a similar story coming from 2 different sources, the rumor becomes validated. Have you ever played that game where you're in a circle and the more people the better, because the end product would be hilarious. But one person gets whispered in their ear some statement. Then that person has to whisper in the ear next to the person the same statement. And then it goes around the circle. And if you've got more than 10, 20 people, it's really hilarious. And by the time it gets to the end, that last person has to verbalize what they heard. And so what starts off as one thing, by the time it gets filtered through all these different people and gets to the very end, it's usually something entirely different. If you need a party game, this is a great one to do. And you can do it multiple times because it's pretty hilarious. Being skeptical does not mean you're rigid, dogmatic, hypercritical, or obtuse. You simply understand that you cannot react to the first answer, and instead you want more evidence before buying into it. Can you imagine if all the things you read on social media, for example, or that you watched here on YouTube, if you saw it and you saw some claim in there that piqued your interest, but instead of just buying into it carte blanche right away, you immediately were skeptical about it and said, okay, that sounds interesting. Let me try to corroborate it a little bit. Let me go see if there's anybody else talking about this in a positive way. And let me see what they're saying negative about this thing. And what are the things being said against it? And when you start to see things from both sides of issues and not be so monolithic, so dogmatic, so obtuse that you can't see the forest for the trees, man, can you imagine if everybody implemented this skill into their life? How the world would be so much different than it is. Skepticism is not denialism either. Anything is possible or not until it's proven to the contrary. Challenging a theory is how new lines of thinking are created. If you believe that one idea is an absolute truth, you don't leave room for incremental improvement. I'll tell you again, in the diet world, this whole idea of being skeptical that saturated fat causes cardiovascular disease, we have Gary Taubes to thank for being one of the first ones that really put it on the radar screen in the mainstream of our culture. He did that in 2002 or 3, I forget exactly when his New York Times Magazine article came out. What If It's All Been a Big Fat Lie was the name of that one. And look how long that skepticism took before we started to see it really come into the mainstream. So he wrote that, we'll say early 2000s. Then he came out with Good Calories, Bad Calories in 2007. Nina Teicholz came out with her book, The Big Fat Surprise, which also was skeptical about fat being an enemy in your health. That was in 2011, 2012. And then since then, many books have been written, many podcasts have come out, many people talking about the healthfulness of fat. And we're now seeing people talk about healthy fats in a way that I never thought when I first started talking about health and nutrition that we'd see in my lifetime to this level. Now, we still have a lot of work to do. The dietary guidelines for 2020 are going to be horrendous, but those aren't based on any facts. They're based on belief. The 2020 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee are very much dug in their heels on an old paradigm that we know is not true and is wrong. This is why those of us that are skeptical keep asking the questions, keep saying, where's the evidence for what you believe? And especially in their case, if you purport to be about the science and purport to wanting to put out things that only are supported by science, why aren't you using science in this realm? You can be a skeptic without being a cynic. Cynicism is distrusting most information that you see or hear, especially when your beliefs are being challenged. Cynics are tricky though. They have a strong argument to debunk other people's ideas, but they have little support to justify their beliefs. So cynics are intolerant. They have inflexible thoughts that leave no room for additional ideas. Yeah, being cynical is not being skeptical. Skepticism says, okay, what you're saying might or might not be true. A cynic says, what you're saying is not true. So a cynic just absolutely shuts down your ability to have a conversation. Skepticism opens up the door and opens up a free flow of ideas back and forth to have a conversation, to come to a consensus about what's true. See the difference? Skepticism is not thinking that beliefs are wrong, but that they may be wrong. So there are two types of skepticism. You can have a negative skepticism or a positive skepticism. By removing bad ideas, negative skepticism allows for the good ones to flourish. So positive skepticism goes beyond the removal of false claims. The Greek word skeptikos means thoughtful. While the need for closure is a reaction in the heat of the moment, being skeptical is less impulsive. It will require inquiring and reflecting. I love this whole concept of skepticism because it's not confrontational. It's merely an inquiry for more information. And so sometimes, and I'll give you an example of this one. So yesterday I posted something about the racial inequality and on my social media. And at the end of that post, I said, well, there's always going to be racists on both sides, talking about white community and black community. And one of my black followers on Twitter took umbrage to that. She said it's impossible for a black person to be racist towards a white person because we have no power over you. And instead, white people are definitely racist towards black people because they have the power over us. So that was her argument. I'd literally never heard that before. So she was skeptical of my comment. And in that skepticism, and we had a beautiful conversation. It ended very well. And I told her I appreciated her perspective and helping to educate me. But through that skepticism she shared about my statement, then I learned something I did not know. And we had this conversation. And now inquiring further about it, which is what I did, and now there's thoughtful reflection on both of our parts that she saw where I was coming from, and then I saw where she was coming from. A positive skepticism will fuel critical thinking. It encourages you to get a deeper understanding of events or things happening in your life. Instead of taking the truth for granted, you're going to question it first. Jim Davis says, the truth will set you free, but first it will make you miserable. So sometimes we don't want to accept truths, and in that not accepting the truth, we can be miserable. That's what Jim Davis is talking about. Is that the guy that came up with Garfield, Jim Davis? Isn't that the same guy? Our need for certainty might overshadow facts. People are certain of an opinion are more likely to act on it. The elections are a great example. When people are confident in favor of candidate X, they are more likely to vote for that candidate than someone who is uncertain, even though they might support the same candidate. The surer someone believes that they're right, the harder it is to persuade that person that they might be wrong. When people are absolutely sure, it's hard to change their mind. And I have tried in my life to never be like 100% absolutely sure of really anything. And of course, people say, well, that makes you wishy-washy. Don't you have anything to stand on? You got to have things you're certain about. Okay, I do have certain things that I do rely on, but I'm constantly reevaluating that belief system. Why do I believe it? Know what you believe and why you believe it. And if you know the why behind why you believe things, then great. Hold on to those things strong. You ask a lot of people why they believe things, and it becomes a cultural thing. They're like, I've just always believed it. But why? Like, what is it specifically about that belief that makes you so certain? I don't know. I just believe it. Okay, well, we have to stop that kind of thing. Because certainty can get you stuck in a position. You shut down to any new information. And back in the political realm, there are people that are just die hard on one side or the other, and you never ask yourself why you believe that way. You never ask any questions whatsoever. You're just die hard, stuck in your position, and you don't want to hear anything that might be an alternative perspective. You have the freedom to choose, but the truth is not optional, right? Neurologist Robert Burton argues that certainty is not a conscious choice, nor is it a thought process, but rather it's a sensation. It's the feeling like you know. It's like anger or fear. It doesn't really rely on any kind of deep state of knowledge. The author explains how most times we are wrong, even when we're convinced we are right. Wow. You can think you're right beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I'll go back to the vegans again. How many of those people believe in their heart of hearts that is the absolute best way to eat for all people to lose weight, get healthy? They believe it. And then what happens? One of them gets sick and they have to start eating meat again because they're deficient in essential amino acids, complete proteins. They're deficient in essential fatty acids. They're missing B12 and on and on and on. But they've always believed it. And it was true and it was real to them. It was that feeling that this is the right thing. And yet it was the exact wrong thing. It's how powerful this belief thing is, guys. Ulrich Neisser, the father of cognitive psychology, conducted the Challenger study to question what he called flashbulb memories, how shocking emotional events can leave a vivid imprint on the mind. So students were asked how they heard about the disaster, where they were, what they were doing. He collected information the day following the incident. He repeated the experiment 3 years later. Students expressed high levels of confidence that their false memories of the explosion were much more accurate than the descriptions they had written down one day after the explosion. One student said, "That's my handwriting, but that's not what happened." Whoa. Like they showed this kid, this is what you said happened the day after it happened. And then 3 years later, they asked him to recall, and he says something totally different. He's like, here's what you actually said. Oh, well, yeah, that's my handwriting, but what I said is what happened. You see how that belief formed in his head over time? The wrong belief formed? The autonomous rational mind is a myth. The answer, Burton argues, lies in accepting the limits of our ability to know and in playing by the rules of scientific method. The concepts of the self and free will are innate useful fictions that allow us to function. Samuel Johnson said, "All theory is against the freedom of the will, all experience is for it." And modern neurophysiology tells us our decisions are made subconsciously before we even decide. So we should embrace positive skepticism, turn challenging the truth into a habit. Once again, I'm not asking you to become a cynic and distrustful. Positive skepticism is about finding the other side of the story to understand whether the sources and analysis are all impartial. Listen to both sides of a story. Look for any heterogeneous sources. Set your conclusions aside, before you read all the information, and ask what if questions to explore a different hypothesis. Avoid reacting as the mobs do. Most crowds belong to an identifiable group. The collective belief dictate the crowd's actions. Fear and anxiety erase logic and rationality. All the mob cares for is to look for a scapegoat. Beliefs will blind individual people, and when the mob is blind, the behaviors are even more damaging. So try to calm the mob before things get out of hand. You also need to be open to changing your mind. This is like a thing in our culture of, oh, you can't change your mind. Once you have a belief, you may never change your mind about whatever it is you believe. I think that's crazy. I think an evolved mind is constantly changing your mind about things. As new information comes in to either support or reject what you believe, you change your mind about things often, and there's nothing wrong with that. Changing your mind is wise. People who get stuck to what they believe is true will stop learning. Turn challenging truths into a healthy habit. Continually question the truth, especially your own. There is never a 100% guarantee that we're right about anything. Use the words I believe instead of I know. Admitting your truth is actually a belief that sets you free. It becomes easier to challenge your interpretation of real events. Adopt a maybe mindset. The world is uncertain and continually mutating. What was right yesterday may not be okay tomorrow. Scientists are constantly discovering new theories that debunk the previous ones. The same thing happens in our life. What seems positive today may unexpectedly turn negative tomorrow. So the truth is always provisional. Adopt a maybe mindset. We don't control life. Life is about discovery, not being certain. Being skeptical will prevent you from taking things for granted because it will help you see life sharper. So guys, skepticism, do you have it? Do you utilize it? Do you make it a regular part of evaluating who you are as a person? And it's not denial of anything other than you don't think you have all the evidence for the truth that you believe in. So go look for that evidence in the midst of the uncertainty. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. Gonna go to Instagram first, then over to Facebook, finally to YouTube. So welcome in, you guys. JimmyRands.com is the website. See what you have to say here about this one. Marnie says Ansel Keys should be turning over in his grave. Yeah, hearing all the skepticism of his theory, I'm sure he is. Ooh, Spanglish Keto says skepticism is just another form of a defense mechanism. Ooh, interesting. Where are you reading this? Wants to know Keto Ann. So this is from liberationist.org, liberationist.org. It was a really great article. I stressed myself out so much I gave myself very bad GERD. Keto and fasting has been helpful. Well, I'm glad you're back on it again. Rachel says, when I first heard of keto 3 years ago, I was the biggest skeptic of them all. Now it's my passion to continue asking and learning when it comes to my health. And Rachel, a lot of us have gotten into this space that way. It definitely is one of those things that once you discover all the things you always believed about diet and health were dead wrong, how do you not get passionate about it? And even in the midst of this, people are like, oh, you want everybody to do keto. And I'm like, do you pay attention to me? I don't think keto's right for everybody, but the people it is right for, you bet your sweet bippy, I want them to eat it. Which is why I get people to be skeptical about what they believe about diet all the time. And there are certain people who don't digest fats well. And so a modified version of kind of a lower carb, moderate fat kind of diet is necessary for those people. So again, being skeptical does require you to look at it through your own prism, but you also have to look at it through the prism of other people where their experience may not match yours. Thank you, Instagram. Let me pop over here now to my Facebook page. What's up, guys? Thanks for being here today. see what you have to say. Nancy says, I'm skeptical about where info is coming from. I want to know the source. Sadly, what I hear a lot is that they saw it on Facebook. Not a reliable source. Yeah, especially with a lot of the things about COVID-19, a lot of the things about the election this year. There's just so many things. I heard, oh, where did you hear? Well, I just heard it, and I'm like, no. I need to know. Send me a link. If anybody makes some kind of bombastic claim, I always say, show me where you saw that information. And most of the time they can't. They just heard it somewhere, they read a headline somewhere, and then they automatically believed it without really looking further. Kira says, after everything doctors have failed me with for the past 20 plus years, I simply don't trust them. I do not trust the American healthcare system at all. I do not trust the World Health Organization or any of the info about COVID or our government. Wow, you're really skeptical. Eat all the fat, meat will heal. I tested this on myself and it works, and it's the only thing I can trust. You're not alone in that, Kira, and thank you for your comment. There are a lot of people that they feel like they've been let down by so many people and organizations that they put their trust in for so long that they just can't anymore. And you get to that point where you have to trust your own experience and what you see for yourself is true and works. And it's almost an impossibility trying to get to absolute truth about anything because there's so many people involved with their own agendas. And so, yeah, well, kudos to you that you figured things out for yourself despite all these people lying to you. Thank you, Facebook. Let me pop over here now to my YouTube channel, see what you guys have to say. Shirley says, I'm skeptical of everything I hear. Always hear things with the possibility that it's true, but I don't like to draw a conclusion right away. I do research to confirm or deny the new information. You are rare. She does say, I'm still open to being wrong about anything. If it wasn't this way, I probably never would have started keto. My spidey senses are extremely tingly whenever the news is on. I read a book called The Unthinkable by Amanda Ripley. It talks about how people in the moment of a tragic situation, your mind will block out certain things to protect you. Ooh, that sounds like a really good book, Shirley. Thank you for recommending that one. So, Michelle says, I caught you finally. Yeah, you caught the very end of my Jimmy Rants. Thanks for being here. See if there's any other comments that came in over on Instagram. Thank you for this information. Life has been much better since this eating change. Well, welcome to the fray. I'm glad you're getting benefit out of it. So guys, healthy dose of skepticism never hurt anyone. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you can engage live in the content, but you got to go follow me right here. Instagram at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, you can engage live and enjoy the content. We go at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, sometimes 5 p.m. Eastern during the week, sometimes over the weekend, but always here at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We also simulcast over here on my Facebook page, so thank you guys for being here today. Wasn't meaning to point at you so much. And then thank you over on Facebook Live, or YouTube Live, excuse me, for being here today as well. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay on IGTV. We also throw all the past episodes up over on YouTube. Just type in a keyword, Jimmy Rants. You'll find the show. Finally, JimmyRants.com. You see all the past episodes. Click on the Patreon link if you like what we do here. It'll help us keep this show on the air. Well, that's it for now, you guys. We'll be back again real soon. Bye. All right. Dance, make it, dance, make it, dance, make it one more time. Was that fun? I like doing these kind of philosophical ones because, you know, it's easy to talk about keto and fasting and cholesterol and all the health stuff, but I like getting people to dig deeper. And a lot of this mindset stuff is just such a passion of mine because once you get this kind of thing, then it makes all that knowledge you have about keto and all the rest, it applies it even better. There's more context there. It also, as you're learning more within learning about keto and all the things, cholesterol, If you have healthy skepticism, for example, it helps refine what you believe and why you believe it. And that's never a bad thing. So I'm going to keep doing these kinds of articles because I think they're helpful. So, all right, let me pop off of here for now. Like I said, I do have to go see the tax guy today. Dun, dun, dun. And hopefully all goes well with that. So wish me luck. So I'll be back again real soon, you guys. Bye.